Welcome to the program. Coming up today, a look at the year in city politics. What kind of tone did Mayor Nichols set? How about the council? We discuss these and related topics today. First up, one of the mayor's chief political advisors, his director of community outreach, Marco Lowe. And we end with two views from outside City Hall, historian Walt Crowley and political consultant Kathy Allen. As always, however, we lead off with some news of the week. There's a new Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy being shopped around City Hall. Councilmember Nick Licata wants to bar Seattle police from inquiring into someone's immigration status. Since the September 2001 terrorist attacks, Licata says many illegal immigrants have feared being deported if they call the police to report crimes or even if they just sign up for various city services. Licata's legislation would allow questioning of immigration status only if there is reasonable suspicion that the person has committed a felony also. Why the fuss? Well, Licata says that immigration violations typically are handled by the federal government and should not be dealt with by local police who have enough concerns as it is. It has actually been the policy of the police department not to ask about immigration status unless there were other concerns. The purpose of Licata's ordinance is to codify that practice into law and to make it clear what the city's policy is. Some officers, though, say such a law will impair their ability to fight crime. The Monorail Board met this week, the first time since the election was certified. Their main item of business, formally accepting the plan approved by voters. Supporters showed up to urge such adoption. It was hardly necessary, but it does show their post-election enthusiasm. Monorail Director Joel Horn also announced that just over a month into the project, they are still on time and even under budget.
Hello, I'm Adam Brockus, BROCKUS. I just want to address agenda item number 3, adopt the Seattle Popular Monorail Plan. It's a good plan, and I think we should all adopt it unanimously. Hey, how's it going?
I'd like to start the executive director's report by letting people know that if we can open the Green Line on December 15th in 2007, remember we want to open the first segment in 2007, that'd be a Saturday, and it would be 1,826 days from today. That's 1,826 days from today, or 5 years from yesterday.
But who's counting, right? The monorail speed is indeed fast. After just 2 weeks of reviewing proposals, the board selected a design team for the project, the same firm that built Vancouver's SkyTrain system. Here's a related Help Wanted ad. If you are interested in serving on the new Monorail Board of Directors, the city is looking for you. Send resumes and letters of interest to Council President Peter Steinbruck. Okay, all you postering folks, listen up. Here are the new rules for advertising on utility poles in Seattle. No glue, nails, or staples bigger than 3/8 of an inch. Posters have to be made of easily bendable material, no bigger than 2 feet and no more than 7 feet off the ground. And I'm not done. Removal within 30 days or within 48 hours of an event being advertised. Got all that? Why all this red tape? Well, the city was forced to come up with new rules after its complete ban on utility pole postering was thrown out by a court as too harsh. Council members hope they have now found a policy balance by which the practice of postering will be both manageable and constitutional. There was much talk at City Hall this week about water, but not the same water that was discussed last week. Then the topic was conservation. Now the topic is creeks. A recent hearing was held about a citizen initiative to compel the city to restore creeks throughout Seattle. A fiscal analysis put the cost of the measure in the several billion-dollar range. Supporters say the council should send the citizen-signed initiative directly to the ballot next fall without tinkering with it. Opponents say the measure is too onerous to property owners who live near waterways.
I am here as a Thornton Creek resident and a citizen, a salmon watcher, and I feel strongly that I-80 needs to go on the ballot as is without being muddled. First of all, there's I-80 itself is a pure initiative. It's not a front for big business. No hired guns brought this initiative to us. The citizens of this city brought this to us.
It's very difficult to understand exactly where the initiative would apply, exactly what would be required, so difficult to analyze the full economic and financial impact, not only to the Port of Seattle, but to the region. We do think that, as written, it would be disastrous for the port.
On now to City Light, which seems to make our newscast every week. The council now says it will indeed vote whether or not to keep Utility Chief Gary Zarker. He has come under some criticism for the department's performance of late. The up or down vote is planned for March, after Zarker has a chance to answer detailed questions from the council and after the public has an opportunity to weigh in during hearings. And now the neighborhood roundup. Here are some items of note from various parts of town. Who says no transportation project ever gets finished? This week, drivers in the Northeast were cheering the reopening of the Princeton Bridge. Not a well-known crossing in other parts of town, but an important one for that neighborhood. The new bridge was dedicated this week after being closed 8 months for seismic upgrades. Next up, Wallingford, which made history on Monday. Gasworks Park was officially designated a city landmark by the council. It's the only such plant that remains marginally intact anywhere in the U.S. But what is a gasworks anyway? Well, I did my homework. Before natural gas was common, there was manufactured gas, which was refined from coal and oil at places like the old gasworks plant. It was Seattle's early source of energy for lighting and heat. The park is a monument to the city's industrial past. And now to downtown, which had more than just holiday shoppers this week. City librarians marched in Westlake Plaza to protest the week-long shutdown of all Seattle public library branches. The move was a cost-cutting measure by the city. Libraries will reopen on December 26th, but 2003 doesn't look like it will bring much relief. Branch hours will be reduced in January, and 2 more weeks of closures are scheduled for the coming year. Said one participant at the rally, library doors may be closed, but our hearts are open. Completing our neighborhood roundup, this item from the Central District. Auditions were held this week for a chance at stardom. Harlem's world-famous Apollo Theater was in town looking for finalists for its amateur night, a long tradition at the venue. One lucky Seattleite will go back to sing at the theater against other finalists from around the country for the top honors. Past winners of this new talent showcase include Ella Fitzgerald, Stevie Wonder, and James Brown. And finally today, cable television. Rates, alas, are going up. In January, private cable companies will increase the price of basic service by $3 a month. We hope, however, you'll keep subscribing and watching the Seattle channel at least. And now a short pause. Coming right up, Seattle Mayor Greg Nichols' Community Outreach Director joins us, and later, 2 views from outside about the year in city politics. Our program continues in a moment. Marco Lowe is here. He is the Director of Community Outreach for Mayor Greg Nichols. Welcome to our program.
Thanks for having me on.
It's a title that sounds like you get dispatched to the problem areas of town. Is that right?
There are sometimes issues that once they get up to the 12th floor, it's Marco, can you go talk to some people and see what's going on and come back and let us know what the situation is?
I mean, what are the typical kinds of things that you deal with?
Well, great example. It's local government, so it's usually issues that don't seem as glamorous as some of the national scene, but it's very interesting, at least for me and the mayor. We're going out to Ballard today. We're going to be on the Burke-Gilman Trail, where it continues and then stops at an industrial area. And the bicycling community really wants to see this continue on through, but it's a critical area for the industrial, and they need to move goods and services. So the mayor's going to be out there touring today with the biking community, and he's already walked it with the business community to see what's going on and what's the best decision.
And to figure out a solution.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're a guy that tries to hammer out solutions.
Absolutely. And to bring relevant people and parties and communities to the table so they can inform the mayor what they're thinking so he can make the best decision.
Is it right to say you don't have anything really to do with the council?
I don't work with the council. We have Mike Mann, who does a fantastic job on that, and I am luckily not necessarily involved in that part of the work.
Which isn't to say that you don't have a political job.
No, I have a very political job in many ways, but the council is a special relationship with the mayor's office, and Mike is the facilitator for that.
What are the big things for you for 2003?
I think we really need to, now that we have our legs underneath us, we're up and running, to really take it up a notch in terms of community relations. We'd like to get the mayor out, maybe starting to do town halls. We want to start organizing and working with communities as economic opportunity task force issues are starting to be implemented. We have some large things up in Northgate, the University District, Rainier Valley, and we need to really engage those communities so they're part of the decisions.
Which will be part of the mayor's agenda this coming year.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What is they sort of say the first year is kind of learning names and figuring out who your staff's going to be and all that stuff.
We had a lot to do besides that. We didn't have that
You had a
opportunity.
big budget and you had a lot of other
Yes.
stuff. But the second year ends up being, they say, sort of a big legislative year.
Absolutely.
For an executive in a 4-year term.
Look at the viaduct. We have to identify funding. Next year, by the end of the year, I think we want to have at least an idea of where the money will be coming together for the replacement of the viaduct, from federal or from the state. It's going to be a big push from our office to make sure that is replaced.
I mean, will that be the mayor's #1 agenda item?
Yes.
What's number 2 and 3?
Good question.
Roughly.
Well, the Economic Opportunity Task Force is, we put about half of the recommendations in place. The next half are going to be more, harder and more important. We have a code system for building in the city. It's very hard. The DCLU is going to be working on rewriting that code so that business can operate with greater ease, and the city shouldn't be a hindrance. I think we're also looking at the monorail is going to have its first big year. We're going to be looking at seeing how they are going to get their permitting and where exactly the poles are going to go, where the stations are going to be located. And they're going to be working with the city on that. So.
And you're the liaison, as I understand it, to sort of the campaigns. You're the mayor's representative for the monorail campaign. You're the mayor's representative for the housing campaign.
Yes, I think it says a lot about Mayor Nichols that not only did he endorse and get this legislation through the council, but then he said, I'm going to help raise money and I'm going to be in the trenches getting my hands dirty to make sure these pass. Because you look at it, housing and the monorail, they're going to be a very big part of the Seattle scene, especially the monorail, for decades to come. And he was a player in making sure that happened.
And you were the guy that...
Yes, I do love campaigns. It's a hobby and a passion for me, and I love being part of that.
And you have been recognized for that. I am happy to note that Campaigns and Election Magazine says you, Marco Lowe, are one of the 52 rising stars in politics.
Well, for 2001.
For the year 2001.
I'm already kicked to the curb in a couple days.
That's, I assume, mostly because of what you did in Greg Nichols' campaign. You, for those people who don't know, were his campaign manager. You were 28 years old at the time. I don't know how you get a big job that young. But you came and led this guy to victory.
It was tough. We were underfunded. We came in as probably less known than the other two candidates. It was a very hard campaign. I'm very proud of the effort by all the staff and the volunteers and everybody else.
Did this campaign, the rap on both candidates were that Mayor Nichols, then County Councilmember Nichols, was going to be too soft and sort of mired in process of Seattle way all the rest, and that Mark Sidra, on the other hand, was going to maybe be, the caricature was, too strong, too Giuliani, all the rest. Greg Nichols, of course, wins, and he ends up being a strong, dare I say, Giuliani-type mayor.
It was all there to begin with. I worked for him at the county council, strong leader there. During the campaign, stuck by light rail. He said, we have to build it. Every editorial said you have to let go. The other campaign hammered him. You have to drop this issue. He wouldn't. He believed in it. He knew it was right for the region. And for the expediency of the campaign, he would not let go. I think that was a statement then that shows now as mayor the strong leadership that he's brought to the office.
Did you and others who are up on the 12th floor say to him on day one, show your might?
No.
Tell the council who's in charge.
No.
Tell him not to talk to department heads. Kind of all the strong stuff he came in with. Was that a deliberate strategy?
No, and I said we saw this leadership at the council when he was at the county, but he still amazes me every day up there. Nobody ever said, Greg, be tough. This is Greg Nichols.
How so?
How does he amaze
How does he amaze you?
Well, decisions. We will say, so often political people can go back and forth. When a tough decision comes before the mayor and he wants to do it, he says, we're going to do it, and we go forward. And Greg Nichols is a very good boss. But if you go back to him later and say, well, gosh, we should reconsider this. No, we've made it. We're moving forward. We're going to do it. That's not often seen in a lot of elected officials.
It is said by many that this 12th floor in this mayor's office is pretty political. You even said that. What does that mean?
For me, I think it means that we're very proactive. I think that we're out there, we're speaking to communities, we're speaking to citizens, and we're really trying to make sure they have a role in government. That's what it means to me. If political is somebody who has their ear to the ground to make sure input's coming into the 12th floor, the mayor's office, before we make tough decisions, then yes, we're political.
Who does the real political strategizing up there? Who's the Karl Rove?
I think there's different roles fit by different people. I mean, I work on the campaigns, and yet we don't have an office like many where there's one person who has sort of the political ear and then everybody else does policy work. There's a very well-rounded staff up there, from the chief, from the deputy mayor and the mayor, down to me.
I mean, is Tim Cease? Is he the real political driving force up there?
Again, I think the whole staff is very interested in not just political but policy. I mean, there's nobody that just sole does it, but the mayor is the boss, and we're taking our steps from him. But yes, Tim Cease is also very involved in those decisions and very good at those decisions.
Mm-hmm. Who do you hear from most when your phone rings and your emails? I mean, who's the mayor's office hearing from most in terms of the community?
It so changes from day to day. It's whatever issue is popping up. When we first came into office, there was the Joint Athletic Fields Development Plan, whereas it was, are we going to put large lights on these fields? And for those 6 weeks where the mayor was touring the fields and looking at them and meeting with the community, that phone didn't stop, and it was usually citizens that either lived within a block or two of those fields or the soccer players or other sports that would be playing on them. And it didn't stop. And my number had been printed in one of the local papers, and they
your
used it.
Your home number?
Yeah,
or your
my
work
work number, but
Okay.
they used it.
They told you what they thought.
And that's great. I mean, that's what local government's about, and that's why I'm here. I really enjoy that.
What's the biggest issue in city government now that people aren't paying attention to and don't have enough interest in?
I think the monorail is going to be the next big, landmark and system in the city of Seattle. And we had a campaign, but the campaign was just build it, tax ourselves or not. Now it's how is it going to be built? Where is it going to be built? And how is it going to expand once they do the first line? And that is, I think people really need to focus on that because this will be a whole new face of Seattle.
What about the viaduct? Do people appreciate enough the viaducts? Safety concerns,
They
role
do.
in the transportation system, etc.
They all do. When you drive down it and see the clamps that are holding the pillars together and the duct tape and everything else I think you're concerned, but I think you're right. Because we still drive on it every day, there isn't the sense of urgency that we need because another earthquake or anything else, this is not going to stand. And
two other issues.
Sure.
The UW Northgate and Northgate. Issues I don't, read about in the front page of the headlines, but you spend a lot of your time working on them. How come?
Well, I was just 2 nights ago out from 7 to 10 p.m. with some very dedicated citizens in Maple Leaf about Northgate. And it's a top issue because here's this large expanse of land that's just not being used to its full capacity. And there's malls competing in the area that could lure citizens away to go up to Linwood, to Alderwood Mall or other areas. It's important that that mall is able to grow, but it's also important that it grows in a way that benefits the community. So we're trying to work with both the developer and the owner of the mall and the Maple Leaf and Licton Springs and all the other great neighborhoods around there to make sure that it's a Northgate that we all want.
And what about UW? What's the issue there?
Well, we just passed the master plan, which was a very big issue, but now it's going to be the lease lid. Can the UW start to lease space again over the 500,000-foot limit in the communities around there? The mayor and the Economic Opportunity Task Force and much of the businesses feel that it's critical that we allow the UW to grow, because look at the Ave today. It's not doing well. And we've put a lot of money into the streets up there, the $9 million project that should finish in the spring. But what if those second floor buildings were able to be occupied with labs and other offices? That would help the retail
And there's
businesses
some
along the Ave.
restrictions on
They
their ability
can't.
to do
They're
that.
at their capacity.
30 seconds, a day in the life of Marco Lowe. How often do you sit down with the mayor and say, here's what I think?
At least twice a day, I kind of sneak into his office when he's got some time and say, Mr. Mayor, we have these situations coming up. It's good that you keep feedback from him as you're moving forward, because the last thing you want is to be 30 feet down the line and have him say that's not where we need to be.
I mean, you're the guy that probably gets in trouble if you haven't told the mayor or anticipated an issue that's coming up.
I've had Tim Cease darken my door a couple times and point to his office and followed him back, yes.
Marco Lowe, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Up next, two outsiders talk about city government when our program continues in a moment. With me now is Kathy Allen, a Democratic political consultant, and Walt Crowley, a historian with HistoryLink.org. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Let me say first, Kathy, you, as we talk about the city, the council, the mayor, you worked for the council for a month in January. Is that correct?
I did 5,000 of the most lackluster dollars you can imagine in your life, telling these guys they need to get a message. I don't think that you should probably equate that with success, given their performances last year.
But you're not now working for any campaigns.
No, although I
on the
have
city
worked
council.
with Jim Compton, McIver, Drago, and Margaret Pagler
All in the past.
in the past.
None now. Walt Crowley, what do you make of this mayor? More aggressive than you thought?
Yes, I would say so. The style has been more abrasive, frankly, than I expected. I think there's been some unnecessary roughness in the relations with the city council. Although I understand the principle of preemptive warfare, and which I guess is now official for the United States as well, and. It's certainly, the mayor is dominating the policy agenda, so I guess it worked.
Kathy Allen, is that what was needed after the shell years that many thought were years of drift, years of not enough leadership?
Certainly it was a liquid leadership where it was moving in every direction every day. The fact is that I think that Greg Nichols gets credit for going in, establishing agenda, making it a very Mayor 101 year that nobody was messing with. Not the press, not the public in many ways, and certainly not the council, who has been, I think, disorganized in the wake of all of his energies to centralize focus.
Has the council found its voice?
I would not say yet. I know there's been efforts. It's interesting. You would expect, and it was my experience when I worked for Wes Ullman, that a strong executive push would unify the council, that they would find at least a working majority and sustain a consensus over time. This has not happened with this council.
Absolutely, he's right. I think that if anything, what's happened is that we see very much of 9 council members who are talking me in terms of their initiatives and their agendas, very little about we. And as a result, I think you find that the palace guard around Greg keeps the focus on one message at a time, and it seems at least to get across to real folks.
You think he's very controlled and very orchestrated?
Actually, I think that we know less about Greg, the person, this year than we did last year when he was campaigning. I think that the folks that surround him have become introduced to the city. I think, if anything, that Greg becomes the quarterback and everybody is sort of like running guard around him so that he's not really touched.
And that's not unprecedented. Again, that was.
Nor a bad
I think
thing.
that was certainly true with Ullman. I think it was true with Charlie to a degree.
Maybe even Norm.
And Norm.
When was the last
Rice.
time we had this strong a mayor?
Well, there are different ways of assessing strength. Wes was obviously a very strong mayor, and he had a huge agenda and a huge set of problems that he had to deal with in the 60s and early 70s. Charlie was, from a PR point of view, very effective spokesman for his point of view. Norm was sort of an inside player, but
Nice.
very personable and effective. I mean, Norm got a lot done for this city. When you look at schools, you look at reviving
You were on
downtown.
his team, really, weren't you?
I was. I'm a fan. Poor Paul. I don't know what to say there. And I think I see Greg as an amalgam, maybe, of Ullman, Royer, and Rice.
I see him as a tough guy that came from West Seattle and a scrapper who's learning the sophistication of the job. He's definitely doing, like him or not, this guy is doing an awful lot to at least get his agenda done. Any mayor who can up his budget some $400-something thousand in a year where everyone else is taking 10 to 20 to more % cuts, now this guy's got his act together.
You call Tim Cease what?
Darth Vader, actually. I don't think he's the shark at all. I think that what he does is that he sort of
Tim.
manipulates that fear of, Tim is going to be around, or is he or isn't he? I think that what happens is that people fear him more than he probably needs to be feared. But there's no doubt you fear those dark clouds of Darth Vader coming down the hall if he's knocking on your door saying planning or something else.
And that is the preemptive quality of it. I mean, I prefer Tim the Impaler myself, but
Up for election next. Up for election
So
next
no
year.
city contracts for us.
Yeah, we're out of that.
I was going to say, I can't wait till Sim C
No
sees this
conflicts of
program.
interest here.
Yeah, no, we'll say you're on the Greg's payroll.
Yep.
5 council members up for election in 2003. Wills, Nicastro, Compton, Steinbrook, and Pagler. Who's the most vulnerable? Walt Crowley.
Nicastro.
Because?
Well, I don't think she's connected in terms of her issues, and she's said and done some things which the press has had a lot of fun with and has tended to trivialize her as a public official.
I think that's true. I think that thing with Nicastro, anyone who runs as a populist only to have a subscription to the Rainier Club and runs on housing and
It's a
then
fine institution, the Rainier Club. I'm
and
going
is
to defend
against.
them.
But
I
I
wrote
think
their
that
history.
the policy thing is the housing levy. The fact that she would be against
Yep.
the housing levy is going to be, I think, a real problem for
That was
her.
poorly played.
And she's pretty young. The average age of the voter this next year is going to be 61.
In the primary election.
In the
on
primary
off year.
election.
Wills, City Light becomes a huge issue this year. Reconfirmations are going to happen. Does City Light and all the problems there come to haunt Heidi Wills, the chair of the Oversight Committee?
Well, that begs a question. Is there an opponent who is going to emerge, who is going to take this standard and beat her over the head with it? I don't see that happening. I think there'll be some generic criticism. I think she's working hard to get on top of those issues and to steer a course for reform and accountability at the utility.
What's your brief sort of reaction to City Light and all the problems and Gary Zarker and?
Well, let me confess one potential conflict of interest, that City Light is a longtime sponsor of History Link. So, just so you know. And we've done a lot of work with the utility on a variety of issues related to their history and public policy. I think it's been something of a bum rap. I think that the problems that they encountered were not predictable. I disagree strongly with the audit that was done. There was no way, and indeed no one did, predict the predations of Enron and its ilk in the California market, and that was really the root of most of these problems.
I got to tell you that I think Walt's got a point on one thing. One is that I don't think people care. I really don't think that
really
next year
this magnitude
that City Light is, despite the fact that it's not exactly a Trent lot, but it keeps coming back at us, and that I just don't think that the public cares. In fact, we got polls that show that people don't right now know what they could have done differently, and they really would like to kind of move on.
Right.
That it's just not on the top of people's
And the truth
agenda.
of the matter is, we still have the lowest urban rates in the country.
Yeah.
A couple more minutes left. Sleeper issue for this coming year, Kathy Allen?
I think it's the change of big business losing its hold to the small businesses. Right now we see with the Boeings and even Microsoft not as defined in terms of our local economy. I see the plethora of all these new businesses. Despite the fact we're in this economic downturn, there still are more new small businesses opening up, people opening up their own shingles. If there's any sleeper, it's the impact of business taxes on these new small businesses that I think becomes an uproar and a storm this next year.
Sleeper issue, Walt Crowley?
Well, I don't know if it's a sleeper. There's several issues we should be watching. Number one, Sound Transit, DOT, monorail. Are they going to sit down, smoke the peace pipe?
That's a good question.
That has to happen next year.
Good question.
I think we need to continue to pay attention to the deterioration of relations between the police and the African American community, in particular in the Central area.
Even the Asian American community.
And other ethnic communities. The economy, I have no hopes for in terms of dramatic recovery next year. We're going to continue to see the meltdown of King County, the collapse of regionalism in general, and the city has pretty well danced out of the budget issues that have really hit other jurisdictions, but I don't know how long it's going to be able to keep that up.
With that, we've got to go. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having
Kathy
us.
Allen is Democratic political strategist. Walt Crowley, a historian with HistoryLink.org. Thanks for coming. And we thank you all for being here. We're off for the next 2 weeks for the holidays. Join us much more with City Inside Out, however, after January. Till then, on behalf of the wonderful people here at our studio crew, whose names you're about to read, I'm C.R. Douglas. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.